Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. This is a live Qualtrics and ANAB webinar about top management commitment to quality. We're very excited to have Melanie Ross with us from ANAB to go through the topic today. And then towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about how Qualtrics relates to the topic as well. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Number one, this is being recorded. And so if you want to watch it again, you want to share it with other team members, that recording will get sent out to you once it's available through Zoom webinar, so you have that available. We're also going to do a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. So if you have questions that come into mind, feel free to actually pop them into the Q&A session just as they come to mind. You don't have to wait to the very end, and we'll go through and answer those towards the end to share what everybody is thinking on the call. Well, let me introduce you. We have some new faces and some new attendees to our webinars. So let me give you just a little bit of background about myself and Qualtrics. My name is Karen Arriviaga, and I'm an account executive here at Qualtrics. If you're not familiar with Qualtrics, what Qualtrics is, it's an all-in-one compliance management solution really designed to automate quality initiatives. Organizations turn to Qualtrics when the cost of quality for their organization becomes too high, whether that's from the beginning when they're developing the quality management system or as they're starting to maintain it over time. Often the manual workload is too high and even risky, resulting in wasted time, money, and resources. And so that's when they start turning to a system like ours. Qualtrics has been in business for about 28 years, and we proudly serve many organizations under, really many different types of compliance pressures today, like ISO, IEC 17025, 9001, 13485, TNI, and many, many more. We also work with accrediting bodies like ANAB. ANAB is using Qualtrics for their own accreditation efforts today, actually. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Melanie and tell you a little bit about our presenter. Melanie Ross has over 20 years of experience in quality assurance, quality control, and quality management. She has worked in several different industries, including chemical, biological, oil and gas, and aerospace. Her main role in each of these industries was development of management systems, including internal audit programs, vendor qualification procedures, and implementation of Lean Six Sigma. Currently, Melanie is the technical products developer for ANAB, designing and delivering training courses, supporting client outreach through business development activities. And her role serves as a technical resource to customers, assessors, and other interested parties. So Melanie, at this time, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to invite you to share your screen. And I can see your screen, but I can't hear you.
I hadn't started talking yet.
Great.
Just clicking all the buttons to get there. Thanks for the introduction, Karen. I'm very excited to be the last webinar of the year for us and for Qualtrics and to discuss top management commitment to quality. Management commitment to quality is important to any organization, whether they're accredited or certified or not. So let's see. So our takeaways for today's webinar is to understand the importance of management commitment to quality. We're also going to review the standard requirements related to management commitment for a couple of the standards that are relevant to the participants today. And then we'll provide examples of how to apply the requirements as part of management activities. And then I want to go into just a few of the benefits of accreditation and how accreditation can help demonstrate management commitment to quality, as well as looking at some of those examples of how they would demonstrate that commitment through accreditation. So management commitment to quality is very important. The management obviously leads the organization. They provide the resources for the implementation and the management of the management system, which contains all those processes related to quality. Their involvement and engagement is needed throughout the organization in order to lead by example and to provide quality processes for individuals to use. The policies and objectives that management set need to be meaningful to the organization and not just set because of a requirement in a standard, but actually drive the business. Integrate the management system into the business operations as well. Again, so that the standard requirements are not just a check the box exercise, but that management is showing the importance of quality and their commitment to quality throughout those policies and objectives, as well as throughout the business operations. So the title of the webinar today is Top Management, and I wanted to go over a little bit about what is meant by the term top management. Numerous ISO standards use that term top management to indicate the highest level of management in the organization. When we look at the ISO IEC 17025 standard, when it was revised in 2017, the standard now only uses the term management, and that was done intentionally. When we think of top management in an organization, we also often think of senior managers, the CEO, the vice president of finance, the director of human resources, those types of roles. And in a laboratory, they may not necessarily have those roles, especially if the laboratory is a capture lab within a manufacturing environment. They may just have a laboratory supervisor. And in that event, management commitment in that setting would be the laboratory manager. True, you do want to have commitment from the top management in an organization, such as the CEO and the vice president of finance and all of those individuals. You want their commitment to quality, but you also want that commitment to quality to flow through all of the management within the organization. Again, the management drives the organization and they set the tone or the culture for the organization. And the individuals working underneath management will follow that lead and will also feel a commitment to quality and demonstrate that commitment as well. So I said we were going to go over a couple of the standards and the requirements within these standards, and I've listed some of them here. The two most familiar for those on the call today are ISO 9001 for quality management system requirements, and the ISO IEC 17025 standard for laboratories doing testing and calibration. There are also a ton of other standards out there, and I just listed one here, which is ASTM. And ASTM puts out a lot of documentation, standard guides, standard requirements, guidance documents for how management can demonstrate their commitment to quality and what are key attributes of the different management positions within organizations. And one of the areas that they're heavily involved in right now is in the cannabis industry, documenting what are quality management system requirements specific to those types of organizations, and how can management of those organizations demonstrate their commitment to quality throughout the implementation of a management system. So for the 17025 standard, there are a lot of areas in the standard that specifically say management shall, and I've laid those out here. The first one that we see is that management shall have a commitment to impartiality. This means that they want the organization to be impartial when performing measurements for testing or calibration. They don't want any undue influences put on the personnel of the laboratory. So management should be aware of, say, incentives to the personnel. Say they want 0 defects or they want 0 non-conforming work. This could happen in a manufacturing environment as well. If you have a goal of that, management is putting more priority on the positive results of the laboratory rather than on the actual results that the laboratory is getting. So that's really what they're talking about here as one example of impartiality. And obviously, management has the overall responsibility for the laboratory. This is important, again, for a capture laboratory. If they have a laboratory manager or supervisor, that individual needs to have responsibility for the laboratory operations. Management needs to define the management structure and the relationships within the organization. And this is really important when you think about quality, is how is the organization structured and how are those relationships maintained? Who reports to whom and who has responsibility for each operation that's performed in the laboratory? Management also needs to ensure that communication takes place regarding the effectiveness of the management system and meeting requirements. This communication is out to everyone in the organization. So this is one place where managers can lead by example. This communication could be in the form of memos or staff meetings or all staff meetings. It could also be in signage throughout the organization or in one-to-one conversations with the managers and the personnel that report to them. Managers also need to ensure the integrity of the management system is maintained when changes are planned and implemented. This is key here for quality. Sometimes we're moving so fast that we make a change on the fly, and then we suffer the consequences for that change. Managers really need to show a commitment to quality by making changes to the management system and to the business operations in a controlled and thought out manner so that those changes don't impact other areas of the organization and that the management system is maintained and the integrity of that system is maintained when those changes are made. Additionally, managers need to communicate those duties, responsibilities, and authorities to personnel. So similarly to discussing the relationships of personnel, personnel need to be aware of what their responsibilities are. When managers let their personnel know what they're responsible for, those personnel feel more empowered to do their job. They don't have to come to the manager. They're given that responsibility or that duty to make that decision. And managers empowering their personnel also demonstrate a commitment to quality. Here they need to establish, document, and maintain policies and objectives. I said before, for the importance of demonstrating a commitment to quality, they need to make these policies and objectives meaningful, not just a regurgitation of the standard, but actually have meat in there that says, what is it that we want to accomplish? What are our objectives and how are we going to get there? Here, they have to provide evidence of commitment to development and implementation of the management system. That right there is the topic of the webinar. Management has to be committed to the implementation of the management system and the maintenance of that system. It can't be driven by one department or one person. Like the quality department can't drive the implementation of a management system. That needs to come from the top down, all the way from the CEO or executive director, all the way through the management system. And then again, they need to ensure internal audit results are reported to relevant management. If you're performing internal audits, management needs to be committed to understanding what those audits mean and understanding the results of those audits if any actions need to be taken. And then they perform management review at planned intervals. And this is so they can ensure the continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the management system. When we look at ISO 9001, this is where we see the term top management. And this is typically because in manufacturing organizations, there is top management, like I discussed before. But we want to think here in terms of all management. So wherever we see the term top, consider thinking all. All management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment with the respect to the quality management system. The standard references several different ways that top management or all management can do this. Some of them are accountability for the effectiveness of the system. We saw this in 17025 as well, and establishment of the quality policy and objectives. The difference here is 9001 says quality policy and 17025 says policies. So 17025 is just a little more broad there, but this is still the policies and objectives that are meaningful to the organization to say this is where we want to be and this is how we're going to get there. The third bullet is important here and as part of this whole webinar is integrate the management system into the business processes. Each manager, whether top or not, needs to integrate this management system, the requirements of the standard, into the processes that they perform within their unit. This ensures, again, that is not just a check the box exercise, but that everyone in the organization is committed to quality and the implementation and maintenance of the management system. Here we we see communication, communicate the importance of effective management and conformity to requirements. They want to ensure that the management system achieves the intended results. Again, that demonstrates the commitment. It's following it through from start to finish. And then they need to support relevant management roles. And this is listed here because 9001 is saying top management. So when we look at all management roles need to be supported within the management system. Additionally, top management needs to demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to customer focus. So they need to determine and understand and consistently meet the customer requirements and address any risks and opportunities. They should maintain a focus on enhancing customer satisfaction. While this is specifically in 9001 for top management, it is also important in the 17025 standard. So I mentioned already that top management needs to establish a quality policy and objectives. The standard continues on to say it needs to establish, implement, and maintain that quality policy. So it's not enough just to say what the quality policy is. Management needs to ensure that it's implemented within the organization and that it's maintained, especially when changes are made. Throughout the years, does the quality policy need to be adjusted as objectives change or as the industry changes? Commitment to the quality policy by management is to maintaining that policy. Here we see also they need to ensure responsibilities and authorities are assigned, communicated, and understood, as well as assign responsibility and authority for key activities. So here's the term authority. I said with 17025, empowering the personnel to do the work that they need to do gives them a commitment to quality as well. It demonstrates that management trusts the personnel to do the job and that quality is key in everything that they're doing. And with 17025, 9001 also says to review the management system at planned intervals. And this is also to ensure the continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness and alignment with strategic direction of the organization. So how can management apply the requirements? It says to communicate with personnel. It says to assign responsibilities and authorities, but it doesn't tell you how to apply these requirements. And there's a lot of different ways that management can apply the requirements of the standard, which in turn demonstrates a commitment to quality. This is through the use of position descriptions that define those duties, responsibilities, and authorities. The organizational charts will define the relationships within the organization. And then as we've seen, the policies and procedures then state, how do we get our job done? So the goals and objectives are set, and those policies and procedures are how we get to those goals and objectives. Again, the policies and procedures and the goals and objectives need to be set in a meaningful way. They don't need to be set as this is what we have to do because we have to set goals and objectives. They need to be meaningful to the organization and drive the organization in a commitment to quality. As far as communication, there's staff meetings, there's all staff meetings, there's production meetings, line walks, all sorts of different ways that management can demonstrate commitment to quality in the way that they hold these meetings and the information that they provide. And then again, there's memorandums, and there's a whole host of other ones that I'm sure you could think of that your management does in your organization or that you do as a manager as well. So when we look at commitment to quality, one of the ways that management, including top management, can commit to quality is to commit to accreditation or certification. So anywhere here where you see accreditation, certification applies as well. Management demonstrates that commitment to quality because the standards used for accreditation and certification infuse quality into the organization. Oftentimes, organizations become accredited or certified because there's a customer or a regulatory requirement. So that's the initial driver. But when top management looks at the tangential benefits of accreditation, they'll see that it also provides for technically competent staff and valid methods, as well as traceable measurements and suitable test equipment. These tangential benefits can also be applied to certified organizations when you're looking at the technically competent staff as well, and documented processes with the idea that quality is infused into those processes. Accreditation and certification is an independent demonstration that the systems and processes conform to the specified requirements, that they produce valid results or produce applicable products, and that they are effectively implemented. It also demonstrates the management commitment to quality in the fact that they are supporting these audits or assessments in the development of the accreditation. When we look at the accreditation process flow, the accreditation body evaluates the technical competence of the conformity assessment body, which here is the laboratory. When we're looking at this as a certification process, the certification body will look at the conformity of the manufacturing environment or the organization that's going under certification. And then that laboratory or organization then produces products or services, which can include calibrations, testing, inspection, sampling, any host of products. They produce those products under that accredited or certified organization. So when we look at accreditation in support of management commitment to quality, it's the assurance that conformity assessment or the conformity assessment body or the organization adheres to internationally recognized standards. It's accomplished by an on-site conformity assessment or audit by a technically competent assessor or auditor who evaluates the management system and the methods used, which includes validity and appropriateness of methods, suitability of equipment, and quality control procedures, for example. The assessment also includes demonstration of technical competence of the laboratory or organizational personnel. The assessor observes laboratory personnel performing the tasks, activities, procedures, and methods related to the measurements and tests on the planned scope of accreditation. So I said before that customer or regulatory requirements often drive the need for accreditation, but there's a lot of different individuals and organizations that benefit from accredited conformity assessments. Consumers, manufacturers, and regulators benefit from accreditation. Consumers use accreditation as a basis for selecting products and services. The accreditation also gives added confidence to the products and services purchased. Manufacturers can use accredited measurements to ensure products meet specifications and requirements, which can avoid cost of product failures and recalls. And finally, regulators use accreditation to enforce national legislation and achieve public policy goals. So again, why should organizations seek accreditation? Well, one, it is that commitment to quality because quality is throughout the standards in any industry. Again, some industries and regulations require accreditation, and accreditation provides confidence in the data generated by the laboratories. Again, this is through technically competent staff, valid test methods, traceable measurements, and suitable test equipment. So testing and calibration accreditation, again, is one way that top management can demonstrate commitment to quality. But accreditation alone will not ensure that laboratory results are valid and reliable. The laboratory management must use accreditation as a tool to implement policies and procedures effectively. They must validate methods to ensure the methods are suitable for the intended use. They must perform proficiency testing to compare their results with those of other laboratories. And this serves many purposes. It demonstrates personnel competence, method reliability, and equipment performance. Additionally, laboratories must understand measurement uncertainty and apply it correctly to final results so that decisions can be made on the quality of the products. This may include the application of a decision rule, such as saying products pass or fail based on a regulation. All of this ensures the validity of results. Without that assurance, the laboratory results are meaningless. And finally, personnel competence must be maintained. This can be accomplished through training and education programs, participation in industry committees, and attendance at webinars or workshops, to name a few. Another area where we see management commitment to quality is in the field of product certification. Product certification infuses a degree of confidence and trust into the products that are certified. Products are certified to specified requirements via testing, for example, It is an impartial and competent demonstration of fulfillment of these specified requirements by a third party. The product certification body evaluates the products to conformance to requirements, and the products are then accompanied by a certificate demonstrating this conformance. Another area where management commitment to quality can be shown is through personnel credentialing. The term credentialing, if I could say it right, may be a new term for you, and it means certificate or certification. Personnel can take trainings to obtain a certificate, or they can go through a formal program to obtain a certification. Requiring credentialing of personnel provides assurance that the individuals meet specified requirements for the positions that they hold. Here, facility certification, think about ISO 9001 for quality management systems. This is where a manufacturing environment gets their facility certified to 9001 in order to demonstrate that they have established fundamental concepts, principles, processes, and resources. This is just one way that organizations can meet objectives, and it is one mechanism that many organizations can use to enhance quality and manage risks. As we saw when we went through the requirements of 9001, there are requirements for top management to demonstrate commitment to quality. This is a roadmap, so to speak, for management to use to show their demonstrate their commitment to quality. So to demonstrate commitment to quality with top management or any management, they need to take accountability for the effectiveness of the management system. This is leading by example or walking the walk, for example. Demonstrate that they are committed to the management system as well as to the improvement of the management system through activities such as internal audits, management reviews, and having an overall customer focus. Management needs to understand the internal and external issues that impact the organization. This allows them to focus their efforts on the best area that they can demonstrate commitment to quality. One of the best ways to demonstrate a commitment to quality is to create a culture of quality and customer satisfaction. This is where individuals understand their duties, responsibilities, and authorities within the organization and act on those in an appropriate manner through the processes that are laid out in the management system. And lastly, integrate the management system and quality into business operations and processes. I've said it a couple times throughout this presentation, just using the standard as a check the box exercise does not demonstrate a commitment to quality. Integrating the management system into the business operations rather than trying to push the business operations into the management system will ultimately demonstrate a commitment to quality by management and by the organization as a whole. So our key takeaways here is that management commitment is important for any management system, whether it's using a standard for requirements on the management system or it's just a business operation that has a management system. Areas where management can demonstrate commitment to quality is through impartiality, communication, defining organizational responsibilities, ensuring adequate resources, which includes personnel, but also equipment and other resources, having an eye on continuous improvement through the use of customer feedback, internal audits, corrective actions, and risk-based thinking, and by holding relevant and efficient management reviews that are effective in identifying areas for improvement in the organization. So before I turn it back over to Karen to show you how Qualtrics can help management demonstrate their commitment to quality, I just want to leave you with a few additional resources that ANAB has. We have many different media to further your understanding of standards, accreditation, management systems, and assessments. On the ANAB website, there are free webcasts on a variety of topics. These webcasts are about 5 to 20 minutes long, depending on the topic, and they can be viewed at any time. ANAB also has a blog page with a wealth of information related to risk, accreditation, standard requirements, and other topics. We also do monthly webinars like this one that we're doing in partnership with Qualtrics. We don't have our 2020 schedule set yet, but we typically do them at the end of the month. So keep a lookout for our next topic. And finally, we offer training in many different areas, including internal auditing, standards, risk, and other topics, including high-level management information on 17025. As with assessments for us, training has changed significantly with the pandemic and travel restrictions. All of our traditional in-person courses have been converted to live online versions and include exercises and discussions related to the topic at hand. Additionally, we offer web-based, self-paced training. One new course that I just mentioned is on the topic of today's webinar. It's ISO IEC 17025 for high-level management. The course dives deeper into the topics we covered today to provide an overview of the standard that is applicable to management. The course is expected to be released in the next couple weeks. All of these resources can be found on the ANAB website at anab.ansi.org. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Karen.
All right, Melanie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, let me take control and share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful. And I think it's really funny. My ears start buzzing every time I hear the phrase culture of quality, right? Like that's an area that we talk about, Melanie, I feel like in a number of our webinars that we've done over the last couple of years. And at the end of the day, especially with this topic, that's how these organizations that find themselves with successful quality systems are really able to push through and be successful, is because they really are pushing to create that culture of quality in their organization. I'll say that, when you listen to Melanie's presentation, she brought up a lot of really neat questions in the very beginning of like, how does management demonstrate their commitment to quality, and how do they provide resources for implementation and management, and how do you push those management systems into the business processes, and also how do you get all of your employees on board, really? And the reality is we talk to a lot of organizations that do this in many different ways. Some of them, we have customers on who use Qualtrics that are on this webinar today. Some people on this webinar probably have manual systems where you're using Excel and Word documents on shared drives. And we even talk to some organizations that are strictly paper-based. And you have all of these options, but I think we can all probably agree with, no matter what you're using, if you can make it easy for your organization to have visibility into your quality system, know how you relate to the standard, and make it easy for your employees to adopt this culture of quality, you're going to be more successful with your certification accreditation efforts. And this is where Qualtrics comes in. Qualtrics was designed to help with the manual burden that you often see with some of these manual systems. The cost of quality can become very high for an organization when you are doing things manually, whether that is tracking things through paper, trying to search and find documents and records when you're in the middle of the audit. What is the risk associated with having manual systems? Qualtrics is designed to help really save money, save resources, and save time. We do that by offering a number of different features in our product. Qualtrics is an all-in-one solution designed to automate your management system, ultimately. And so we're giving you the ability to manage all of your documents. And so as somebody that's on that management team trying to show commitment, making sure that you're communicating all of your processes and your procedures to your employees correctly, and making sure that they're only getting their hand on the document that was last published, and there's no risk that it's going to be out of date. Melanie mentioned training, making sure your personnel can prove that they're competent to complete the tasks that you're being asked to complete, and can prove that through different testing. That's a portion of our product. Workflows pertains to process automation. And so it's taking it a step further and not just having an SOP that tells somebody what to do that you're training them on, but actually automating that process to make sure that it is being controlled, and that you can prove that you're following your own process by collecting the information in fields within that process itself. And the last thing, and probably the most important part of this is reporting. This is your visibility. You know, when you think of everybody in your organization, it's often that people are wearing multiple hats. So the faster you can get them information and visibility into their quality system to get what they need to, so they can continue on with their day, the better. And so having everything in one location so you can easily report on it and have visibility is going to be key for the success of your quality system. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pop up Qualtrics, and I'm going to take you on just a little bit of a tour. You know, there are some specific things that Melanie pointed out and that relate to our system and how you show that you are following the standards. And so I'm going to start with documents. Documents is probably the first thing that people are going to adopt when they purchase a quality management system like Qualtrics. You probably have a system of document or a system that you're managing documents in today. You want to make sure that everything's in one location and that you're controlling the full life cycle of those documents to make sure that nobody gets their hand on a document that's out of date. With Qualtrics, we're giving you that one location for all of your documentation to live. And because we're controlling the full life cycle of the document, anytime somebody accesses a document in Qualtrics, there's never going to be a risk that they're getting a document that's out of date because we're controlling that full life cycle for that document. When I click on our safety manual example here, and I go into properties, I'm going to show you the history of this document. You can see with Qualtrics, because we're capturing all of these details, we're actually eliminating the need to have master document lists that you're managing through Excel. We're going to be capturing all of that information for you, and you would just report on it and have visibility into it. So therefore, when management is making changes to your business processes, you can quickly show who's editing and approving those documents, when they're being published, and that they are being controlled. Another really nice part about our documents is the ability to link our documentation to the individual clauses of the standards themselves. So imagine you're about to go into your 17025 audit or your 9001 audit, and you want to get a pulse of how your SOPs relate to the documentation or to the clauses of the standard. We have a report called Documents by Standards that you can run, that you can actually select a portion of a standard. In this case, I'll choose a little bit of 17025 here. We'll choose some standards here, or some clauses of the standard here, and we're going to run this report. And when I do that, what you're going to see, we're going to get some more data points in here, is you're going to see the list of the standard and where I have documentation supporting those areas of the standard. If I were to be going into my 17025 audit tomorrow, I can clearly see that I have some misses here. I do not have SOPs and processes supporting specific areas of that standard. And so through this type of visualization, you can really get a pulse on your organization of how you are set up for those audits. You know, as management changes their documentation and the SOPs over time and they maintain that information, you know, tracking competency to those changes is a big part of the standard itself, no matter what standard you're under. So I'll take you through a training example here in Qualtrics. We do have the ability to do competency training and testing within the system itself. What you're doing is creating a description of a training, pointing people to specific resources, and then testing them on those resources. So in this example, you can clearly see this is an example of an equipment maintenance training that somebody needs to go through. I'm pointing them to our calibration procedure. I could also be pointing them to a video or a PowerPoint presentation in the system as well. From here, they would type in the date they were trained, add certificates of completion if that's relevant, and hit training is complete. And at that point, the system can force them to take a test to prove competency. You know, Melanie mentioned personnel credentialing. And so this is a way to be able to do some of that in Qualtrics where you're capturing that information and it's going to be added to that individual's personnel record. From a reporting standpoint, again, when you think about everybody that is trying to capture this information manually, instead of doing it manually, now you're just running reports to gather the information that Qualtrics is capturing for you. So if I go to my training matrix, I can run this report. Let's just say for all users, I want to see all of my trainings. I can see the trainings and of what has been done, what has been completed, what is optional, and what is required. All of these records are going to be automatically tracked by our system. I can go into somebody's personnel file and you can even see their individual training records of when they took those trainings, if they took the test, if they passed the test, and so on. Another way that management can show commitment to quality and really just keep a pulse on their organization is through actions like management review. We actually, Melanie and I did a webinar on management review. I think it was in the beginning of this year, actually, now that I think back on it. And the biggest thing with management review and really all processes is you've got to prove to the auditors that you are showing that you're following your own processes. With these workflows that you see listed here, these are workflows specifically designed to help show those records to the processes that you are walking your employees through. And so here you can see that we've got workflows for audit management, corrective action, customer complaints and feedback, nonconformances, risk assessment, and the list goes on. If we have one for management review, this is a great workflow to use to make sure that you are performing management review and capturing all the details around that management review. Well, let's pretend that we're going through management review, and one of those action items is that we need to make sure that we are understanding and looking for trends and opportunities for improvement with every corrective action request that has come in for the year. The best and easiest way for me to be able to do that is actually run a report. So I'm going to run a report here of every corrective action request. I've got a corrective action report right here that I can run. And I'm going to run a report of every corrective action instance that has been submitted into Qualtrics for this last year. And so here's my report. I can see the source of the corrective action. So this one came in through a customer feedback. This one came in through an internal audit. This one came through an external audit. I'm actually capturing the standard information and the clauses that those corrective actions are related to. So if it's a process issue, I'm linking it to the clause that that process relates to, so I can identify trends and opportunities for improvement. So here's the observed issues, the date of occurrence, what immediate action was taken, and so on and so forth with that information. So if I'm performing management review and I take a look at this report, I can see that section 4.1.1 is continually coming up in some of my reporting. I can dive into that and identify that as an area that we need to bring some improvement on. I can add it as a risk for my organization and make sure that that is logged in management review with somebody monitoring it to make sure that we're able to overcome those issues. You might ask yourself, well, how are you actually capturing this information in Qualtrics? That is through our corrective action workflow. This is a workflow that comes standard with your Qualtrics instance. No matter what compliance pressure you're under, we have the ability to adapt these to your organization's needs. And we're ultimately taking you through this process. You know, you're going to go through root cause analysis for the corrective action. Then you're going to go through plan development. This might get passed back and forth to different people at different times. Then we're going to implement that corrective action plan. After that, we're making sure that you're going through effectiveness review, where we'll either rework the corrective action if it wasn't effective, maybe even let customers know if it is effective, and then close that corrective action. What this workflow is demonstrating is the process that you are going through and capturing this information in our system. So if I go to complete root cause analysis and scroll up here, you'll notice we're capturing information about the nonconformance. What happened? What section of the organization? What standard was it related to? What was the description of the observed issue? Maybe we had a problem with equipment. Maybe it wasn't calibrated in time. Was there any immediate action taken? We took the equipment offline. Is there any supporting documentation I want to add? And what was the original source? And now I'm filling out more information. Okay, we do need to go to root cause because this is an issue that keeps recurring, and we really want to make sure that our equipment management process is locked down so we can avoid this in the future. Was work stopped? If so, when? When did it resume? Who's going to be responsible for cause analysis? And then what is that cause analysis? And then ultimately, who's responsible for corrective action plan? I'm going to choose myself, so this stays with me. Once somebody fills out this information, they're going to hit submit, It'll automatically be routed to the next appropriate team member or individual in line. Every single time you see an arrow with these processes, think email notifications, because Qualtrics is going to be sending out emails letting people know when it's now their responsibility to take action in the system. A big part about Qualtrics is holding people accountable to their quality system within the organization or for that organization. So the email notifications that are being sent out really play a big part to make sure that you're on top of your quality initiatives. This was a very high level overview of Qualtrics. We actually could spend another, hour, 2 hours going into the details of what our system has to offer. We're not going to do that today because we want to get to your questions. But if you do have interest in learning more, please let us know. We're happy to have a conversation and answer some of those questions. So without further ado, Melanie, I'm going to invite you back on and let's go start going through some questions. We can dive into this a little bit further and get some questions that we have from our attendees here. Again, feel free to ask as many questions as you want to. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we're happy to get to those.
Yep, and I'm back.
Wonderful. All right, Melanie, here's one. How do I link documents to other documents when I change a process FMEA? Can documents tell me where I need to update the process flow or control plan using the part number as a key field?
I think they're asking about in Qualtrics.
I think so too. Now, I didn't read the question before I read the question. How do I link documents to other documents? And when I change a process of FMEA, can the document tell me where I need to update the process flow or control plan? So yes. So you have some options here. How do you do this? So let's talk about documents here for a second. And again, we touched very high level on documentation in Qualtrics. At the end of the day, what we are trying to do with documents in Qualtrics is automate as much of the document management process as possible. So let's pick on this safety manual again. If I go to the properties of the document, one of the areas that you have within the document properties is this reference tab. This reference tab allows you to take documents and reference them between each other or create dependencies if you want to. So what that means is that if you are making a process change to one of your documents and your document has a dependency or a reference, Qualtrics is actually going to alert you and remind you that that reference exists. So you can make sure that you're also reviewing that document or that form or whatever it is to make sure that doesn't need to be updated as well. Another part of your question was, can the document tell me where I need to update the process flow using the part number as a key field? That's something Sterling will want to probably take offline to make sure we're getting you the appropriate answer based on what you guys are doing today within the system, but I'll definitely capture that information and we'll have somebody reach out to you to help you with that. Great question. Here's another question that came in. How do I measure the effectiveness of risk assessment? Is it an advanced management review requirement, but difficult to show evidence of that? Melanie, do you have anything to add there?
I do. So that is a really great question, Sterling. It's one that we see laboratories struggle with throughout the industry because there is no requirement to have a process for risk assessment. There's no requirement to have records for risk assessment other than, as you note, to discuss it in management review. And it just says to discuss the outcomes of risk assessment, right? Or addressing risks and opportunities. So we see a variety of different ways of organizations looking at the effectiveness of their risk assessment. One is by looking at nonconformities that occur. Are any of the nonconformities that occurred, are they on the list of risks that were identified? If they were, then maybe those measures weren't effective in eliminating that risk. If it wasn't, then it needs to get on that list of risks. And depending on the organization, the size of the organization, that list may be something that's just maintained as a discussion, or it could be something that's documented, like an Excel file or a Word document or in a workflow in Qualtrics. So to measure the effectiveness, again, one is the corrective actions, the nonconformities that are occurring within the organization. The other one is your internal audit findings. And then the last one would be looking at it in management review to say, is the audience of management review, they know the organization, is there anything that we're missing? So you want to just say that's how it would be effective if you've covered every risk or opportunity that could potentially occur or has occurred.
Mhm, mhm. And to kind of to jump on, what Melanie was saying there, because I think that that answer that Melanie was touching on is very important. With Qualitracks, what we see as some organizations do is they'll actually start linking some of their workflows together. So like we have management review, we have corrective actions, we have risk assessment. Our risk assessment workflow is, to what Melanie is saying, um, where you're capturing the details about the risk and then you're putting plans in place to help mitigate those risks. So you're grading the risk, trying to identify if this is something that needs to be addressed right away or if this is something that just needs to be monitored. You're putting in monitoring dates to make sure that managers or the people that are responsible to manage those risks are being alerted when they need to look at those and take action, because things change. A risk that is a risk today that might not need to be mitigated right away might change in 6 months or a year. And so you want to constantly be looking at that to make sure that things don't change and something becomes more important that's more severe for your organization. When I talk about the linking, if you look at this risk assessment workflow, what we're doing here is just simply writing down the information around the risk that you've identified in management review or your audits. You're giving it a grade so you know how to mitigate it, when it needs to be done, or how it needs to be monitored. And then you even have the ability to launch a corrective action request from that. And so there's ways within a system like Qualitracks to link those to make sure that you as an organization have those connections and truly have a pulse of what's going on. All right. And Melanie, out of curiosity, because I don't see any more questions coming in. What do you think, what do organizations struggle with the most, on this topic, in your opinion?
As far as management commitment, I think the biggest one is just demonstrating it.
Hmm.
That's where you said the culture of quality, and I said it too, is ensuring that that is infused in the organization. And really, cultures are hard to change. So if it's an organization that's newly looking at management systems and looking at, oh gosh, we're going to track nonconformities and we're going to
Right.
look at things that went wrong, and risk, that's a bad word. That's really one of the challenges is, and that's where it's important to have that management commitment, because without that commitment, you're pushing from the bottom up and it's just
Hmm.
not going to work.
Right. Like I heard it when you said it in your presentation. You can't just have a quality team and expect them to force a culture of quality. It really has to be, a commitment from that management level down. And that's what, when Melanie shows you all of those training sessions that ANAB puts on, those are great resources to go to just learn more and more into the details of how to really do that for your organization. So I highly recommend those as well. Very educational and informative. This is an interesting question that just came through the chat. We are a company that invented a new way to objectively measure food quality. Any thoughts on introducing quality monitoring program into introducing a quality monitoring program where there is no program?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question that could have 1,000 different answers, Keith. Two thoughts come to my mind. One would be to implement the standard 17043, which is for proficiency test programs. If you're accredited to that program or to that standard, then you're saying that your program meets the standard requirements and that you have a commitment to quality by management as well. It's in that standard as well. Another way to do that is to go out to those food organizations to look, you can look at ASTM, or you can
Right.
look at, go to the FDA. They just put out a new rule for their food safety program, FSMA. So they have new rules for testing laboratories in that area as well. But from an accreditation perspective, the standard 17043 is the standard requirements
Mhm.
for proficiency testing. And you say quality monitoring, and that's where my brain went. That might not be where your question was, but that's how I interpreted it.
And I mean, I know, Melanie, we both work with cannabis laboratories, which was, when we say relatively new, probably in the last like 4 to 5 years that it's really been kind of the big push in that industry. We saw a lot of groups trying to standardize some of that. And so ASTM was something that definitely of topic and such. I mean, Melanie, is that kind of what you had seen with the cannabis labs as well, of organizations trying to standardize that industry?
There are a lot of different organizations. ISO itself has committees that are looking at standards for the cannabis industry. ASTM is one. There's some bigger ones in Canada that have come together to create their own programs as well. So there's a lot of activity out there for the cannabis industry as far as trying to generate standards where there just weren't any.
Right. And so that might even be something, Keith, to look into, is what have other industries done before you to really help with this as well. So just a thought out there. Great conversation, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I don't see any additional questions coming in, but if there's anything, let me pull up my contact us screen. If there's anything that you have questions on beyond this, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We're happy to help. You can reach out to me at Karen@qualtrics.com, and I can, even if there are questions for Melanie, I can make sure that she gets those. So thank you, everybody, so very much. Yes, this is going to be recorded and it's going to be emailed out to you so you can watch it or share it with others. And thank you, everybody, so very much. And again, happy holidays, and happy, let's hope we have a great beginning of 2022, and be on the lookout for more webinars. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Karen.
Absolutely, Melanie. Bye-bye.